truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. We'll be covering all of it here on NTD, starting right now.
Thank you for joining us for this exciting day. We are just moments away from this momentous occasion. This parade is celebrated right here in New York City and around the world every year. It's a beautiful occasion.
Yeah, on that note, I'm always blown away by the sheer number of people who show up every year. It's hundreds or even thousands, and just the bright colors that they wear and the energy they bring is just really uplifting. We're so excited to have you here with us. I am Tiffany Meyer with my co-host Stephania Cox. And here in studio with us, we have David Zhang, host of China Insider. He'll be giving us China insights and some live translation. So David, thank you so much for joining us. And what does this parade mean to you, given that you do cover China?
Well, thank you, Tiffany and Steph, for having me. And this parade really demonstrates the perseverance through all of the hardships that we've seen over the past 20 plus years. And they're showing us why they're standing still strong in Manhattan today.
That's a great point. And on that note, we are going to give you a little bit of background on this parade and why it's happening. So today, thousands of Falun Dafa practitioners are participating in this parade here in New York City.
Yeah, the parade shines a spotlight on this meditation discipline that's rooted in traditional Chinese culture.
It's called Falun Dafa, or also Falun Gong, and right now around the world there is a great emphasis on freedom, and this parade respects and honors this faith-based group, which began in China and is now practiced around the world.
Falun Dafa is a traditional self-improvement discipline that includes meditation exercises.
The practice is based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
And May 13th this year marks the 32nd anniversary of Falun Dafa being introduced to the public in 1992.
And since then, it quickly gained widespread appeal for its moral teachings, but also health benefits, spreading to over 150 countries around the world.
But unfortunately, this peaceful practice has been facing brutal persecution in its country of origin at the hands of the Chinese regime since 1999. So the parade today also aims to bring to light the suppression of human rights that has happened to the Falun Dafa practitioners inside China. Now, David, we would love to have your insights on this, and I'll be getting to that shortly. But to begin with, could you just lay out for our viewers who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I host a program on YouTube called China Insider, where I look into the key important social issues and political issues of the day, Falun Gong's persecution being one of the most important issues of this decade, and I think that's why we're here to focus on that today.
Great. And so just regarding the persecution that we've brought up, and this group, what's something that people out there may not know about this group?
Well, through its early inception, it's really a grassroots movement that spread far and wide across China very quickly. But after the persecution, the group remained peaceful in its resistance, and it's been able to show us why it's such a powerful way for them to demonstrate what their core beliefs are. And throughout that, we're seeing they're still standing today.
That's a great summary, actually. And over the next 90 minutes, we will get to learn in vivid color more about the practice's roots, their extraordinary story, and we do have our reporters on the ground. We'll be talking with people about ancient Chinese culture, a modern peace movement, and where the practice stands today.
And on that note, let's take a look at the parade route. The parade starts at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza on 47th Street and 2nd Avenue, which is near the UN headquarters. Then it heads to 42nd Street, and from there it passes Grand Central Terminal, Bryant Park, Times Square, and the Port Authority Terminal, and then proceeds to the Chinese Consulate on 12th Avenue. The helicopter flew above the East River as well as New York landmarks, including the Statue of Liberty.
And against a clear blue sky, the captivating banner reads, Falun Dafa is good in both Chinese and English.
This is from practitioners of this meditation discipline, hoping to celebrate the anniversary of Falun Dafa and to spread the message of their peaceful practice to the world. And also this week, some of you in New York may have caught sight of this helicopter here. I don't know, did any of you see that?
I did see it, actually.
You saw it, amazing. Yes, what a sight that must have been.
Yeah.
It really is, given that it did have those bright colors and very eye-catching, and that it had text in both Chinese and English. I think just that alone would stand out.
Exactly, yes.
So next up, one of the main features of the celebration and the parade today is the Tianguo Marching Band.
And our reporter actually caught up with some of the band members to learn more about what they do, but also why.
You can see the parade here already beginning, some gorgeous banners.
Steph, that's actually what we're seeing is a formation called the taiko drum. Now, it looks similar to a Chinese drum called the Tang Dynasty drum. You see that the beer keg shake actually provides a lot of great sound. And this drum traditionally was used in Japan to ward off this evil spirits as well as provide this restoration of righteousness. And so it's used in a lot of ceremonies and is often used in parades like this to show this amazing and very strong sort of vibe that they're giving off. And so we see this group is actually from the Northern Academy up in upstate New York, and it's a great sight to see.
Such a beautiful energy there.
And there you have another bright sign saying Falun Dafa is wonderful. Again, bringing home that this is the 2024 World Falun Dafa Parade here in New York City.
Now, I want to just add one point about Falun Dafa. When it started to spread in China back in the 90s, one of the key aspects of it was that it was really at a moment where China was in a void of needing to fulfill its sort of spiritual and moral values. And when the Falun Dafa's core characteristics, truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, came out as the message, that's really resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah, this is such a good point, and that really speaks to the energy that you can see of, such bright colors, the blue, this bright yellow, and of course we have here the Tianguo marching band, which soon we'll get to listen in on as they get closer. But so Tianguo, for those of you who don't know, it means celestial in Chinese.
David, is that right? Is it a good translation?
Yeah, there's also another one I like to say. It's called heavenly, which, the idea here is to demonstrate, I think, a core of Chinese culture, which is the associations to divinely inspired culture of its past and its history. And a lot of the Chinese heritage are actually founded on that idea. And so you'll see throughout this entire parade a lot of messages associating with those traditional values of faith and of beliefs and morals.
Yeah, that's so true. And so this band is actually comprised entirely of practitioners of Falun Dafa. And we'll also get to see, you saw with the drum players, but these people are from all ages, all walks of life, and you can't see this, specifically as you look on, but they're also from all different kinds of professions, and they volunteer their time to bring, especially this band's special grand sound to the cities and events all around the world.
Yeah, before we just listen to them, I just want to add, actually, I spoke with a few of the participants, and they tell me that, they've never picked up an instrument in their life, yet through sort of this belief that they can work hard and achieve that, they've been able to play these instruments, play beautiful pieces, and the music. A lot of these are, someone's aunt or somebody's uncle, and so they're not a professionally trained player, yet they play amazing sound.
Yeah, that is incredible because, the band does play original compositions, and many do say that the music the band plays brings people beauty, hope, and strength as if they are listening from heaven. And I think we actually can listen in a bit, so let's hear what the band sounds like right now.
Oh, there it is. That was a beautiful sound. You know, they march in step with each other so tightly. They're really cooperating, you can see, and they just feel like, you know, one piece, don't they? You know, with the sound, but also the visuals. And it really reminds me that, you know, marching bands have this connection, deep kind of connection with military bands. You know, which in themselves have a rich history, and their roots trace back even to ancient times. So, you know, it's like these musical ensembles have evolved into sophisticated units. But what have we got here? Oh, another new banner. That's a lot of Chinese. David, what can you tell us about what we're seeing on screen?
Yes, Steph. So today is also the founder of Falun Gong's birthday. So all these practitioners here, it seems like they're wanting to celebrate the birthday, but also just to attribute to the personal development that they've gained and benefited from over the years. And so the banner here reads that, teacher, you have worked hard, thank you. And this vertical one here reads World Falun Dafa Day, and this is to congratulate and to wish the founders happy birthday. And we also see this here is in the central cortex of Falun Gong called Zhuan Falun. In all sorts of different languages, we see there's, I believe, Vietnamese, there's Russian, there is traditional Chinese, all sorts of different languages that it's been translated.
And that really speaks to just how many people around the world learn it and practice it. 150 countries, I believe.
Right, and to David's point, like we mentioned earlier, right, May 13th this year marks the 32nd anniversary of Falun Dafa being introduced to the public back in 1992, and it is now spreading to over 150 countries, like we mentioned, just speaking to the wide appeal that it does have, right? So all these different ethnicities are all drawn to it. So Falun Dafa, or Falun Gong as it's also called, actually represents a direct connection to genuine traditional Chinese culture that does go back thousands of years. The teachings pull from profound ancient philosophies like Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism that were the bedrock of Chinese civilization for millennia.
Yeah, and we will definitely be getting into this further, especially with David and what you can tell us about the history of this. But we will be tuning into our reporter Fiona G, who's on the ground there at the parade, speaking with people down there. Fiona, what have you got for us?
Hi, Steph. We are here on the streets of Manhattan, where the parade celebrating World Falun Dafa Day has just kicked off. I'm actually here with a young practitioner of Falun Dafa. She's here to share some of her experiences. Hi, Anna. Could you tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to Falun Dafa?
Yeah, so actually my family was already practicing before I was born. It started with my mom. She used to be like really weak, and she had insomnia and depression. And also she was always looking for like faith and just something to believe in. And then when she started practicing Falun Dafa, her health and just like outlook on life completely changed. And like, for example, when she had my older brother, before she started practicing, she had a lot of health issues like before and after, and it was just really hard for her. And when she had me, like a lot later on in life, given her previous medical condition and her age, she would have been like pretty high risk for complications, but it actually went really smoothly. And I've been told that I was also a pretty big baby. So like overall, it's just like a really big shift from before she started practicing.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And so this means that you grew up in a family that practices Falun Dafa. How did that impact your life growing up?
Yeah, I think it gave me just an earlier awareness of like how to be kind and considerate of the people around me. And in addition to that, like I was just a really hearty, healthy kid. Like I very rarely got sick, and even now as well. And I remember when I was a kid, whenever I did get sick, I would always prefer to meditate with my mom because it just always made me feel a lot better. Yeah.
Wow, well, that sounds great. Sounds like you actually chose to meditate instead of eating medicine as a kid. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Anna. Well, Steph, there you have it. That was Anna sharing a little bit about what it was like growing up as a Falun Dafa practitioner. Back to you.
Wow, that's such a beautiful insight into, this practice, which actually many people may not know much about, but there are so many stories out there like that. And from someone so young, experiencing it from such a young age, what a beautiful insight. We have seen in the footage today already some traditional Chinese symbols, from Taoism, from Buddhism. People out there may have recognized them or maybe not, but let's get into some of those symbols. One of them looks a little bit like the swastika, but of course it's been around for
much longer, thousands of years, yes.
And to many people throughout Asia, the meaning of this symbol is really something else entirely than...
Exactly, Steph. And to talk about that, in China, in Eastern culture, there's really a big emphasis on spiritual development in its history. So even back in the day, scholars, they had to understand and meditate in order to gain this inner peace, tranquility. And so when this Falun Dafa was introduced back in the days, that was during a time when people in China really felt like there was a lack of faith in the society, and there was a lack of outlook for where does things go, especially given the fact that this was just a few years after political movements in China under the communist regime. And so you can see that that's why this movement gained a lot of traction and immediately was resonating with all walks of life, from the farmers in the countryside, city officials, to the police, everywhere else. All sorts of careers. People were coming out doing these practice in the parks, in the morning and night, and going about their days. And so it was a very peaceful period until the persecution started in 1999.
Yeah, you raise a really good point, because in The Slaughter by Ethan Gutman, he recounts kind of the beginning era of Qigong in China, and then how that was the environment where Falun Gong or Falun Dafa appeared in. And then he recounts his own funny story of him trying to yell at his wife to get to this museum because it's snowing outside, it's really cold. But then they pass a park where there's just all of these practitioners doing this standing exercise, just standing in the cold without very many layers of warm clothes. And he just felt so silly just making fun of them. And so that kind of speaks to that perseverance that you were mentioning earlier.
Oh, what a gorgeous boat we're seeing just float by.
Is actually the Divine Land boat that I believe just got introduced this year, as I'm being told. And it has these floating clouds, which you'll see a lot of the emphasis and accents on this sort of floatiness and this heavenliness in Chinese culture. Again, I think this parade, the key here, Steph and Tiff, is to understand that this is not just about traditional Chinese culture. It's actually about a revival of traditional culture across the world. And so that's what I think a core message for, although everyone seems relatively peaceful and walking down this, is that they want to demonstrate that this is not just about them and their story, but it's about spreading what is supposed to be the traditional values that they've held true over the years, and demonstrating that to Americans today. And you see, this is actually one of the exercises that they do. So one of the research that I looked into for Falun Dafa is that, why were people ranging from, as we heard with the guest, very young to very old? It was because there was a common understanding that a lot of these transcend age, transcend race, nationality, and so it was something that everybody in China, and now we see around the world, could do, and it was something that they felt like did not need to be restricted. And so values like truth, peace, compassion, love, I think these are all fundamental human values that we can all get behind, and that's what they're demonstrating today.
Yeah, certainly universal values that anyone can get on board with: truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. Who can deny that? But as you saw, we were showing some footage of the exercises, the meditation. Some of it is moving, some of it is seating, as a traditional meditation that people know of. But they're said to lead energy through the body as well. And as people would have known, there's meditation is shown through study after study to improve people's health, mentally, physically, emotionally. So people are really reaping the benefits of that by engaging in this practice.
And Steph, just to highlight something very interesting, is that throughout the parade, you'll see banners in traditional Chinese rather than simplified Chinese. And that's, again, a recall back to that traditional value aspect, because simplified Chinese was actually introduced following the Chinese Communist Party's takeover of China. For a very long time, traditional Chinese, it had its character meanings, which are very much rooted in its history behind each of the characters. And so you see here that they again want to bring back the revival of traditional culture. And so some of these banners here says world needs truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. I think that's a great message, as well as again some congratulatory messages to the founder of Falun Gong, and Falun Dafa is great. Again, you know, the truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance is the core characteristics of Falun Gong. But I think it honestly is a core principle I think everybody really preach or should live by. That's, you know, here we see the book again of Zhuan Falun, which is the core text of the practice.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you're raising, David. So these banners and these characters that we're seeing in Chinese, we wouldn't be able to see those in mainland China.
Yes, not today.
Because that would be in a simplified form. I think that's like, again, a testament to the drawing back to the ancient Chinese culture and tradition and all the wisdom that we can learn there. But if you are just tuning in, this is the 2024 World Falun Dafa Day and NTD Live special coverage. This parade is here in New York City, and we are going now to our reporter out in the field in Manhattan, Chris Beers. Chris, what do you have for us?
Hi, Tiff. Yeah, great to see you. The energy here is strong, despite a little bit of rain and some cloudy weather. I have with me here a spokesperson for the Falun Gong spiritual movement, Arping Zhang. Arping, talk to us about the significance of World Falun Dafa Day. What is this day about?
Well, in the year 2000, United States and about 13 countries, the practitioners decide to celebrate and commemorate the May 13th as a World Falun Dafa Day, because in 1992, on May 13th, Master Li Hongzhi introduced Falun Dafa to the world. And ever since, we have over 100 countries and people from different ethnicities, you know, different cultural background, religious background, come to practice Falun Dafa. And Zhuan Falun has been translated into 40 languages. So we decide to show our appreciation for the master, and it so happened to be his birthday as well. So we want to celebrate this special day. And it's been 24 years that Falun Gong practitioners in New York, you know, carrying on with activities, parades like this.
Yeah, tell me about that. You've been in the U.S. practicing Falun Dafa. You were saying before since 1994. Is that correct?
Yes. Back in 1994, there were only a few Falun Gong practitioners. We didn't even have a practice site. And all of a sudden next year, we started organizing. There were two sites. One is at the University of Michigan, one is at Atlanta. Basically, the Falun Gong in the United States started with the Chinese students. And back then, we put the Zhuan Falun onto the internet so people around the world can read it. I've met people from England, from Africa, who learned Falun Gong through the internet. And back then, it was supported by the Chinese government. And the Chinese Consulate General in New York helped organize the first experience sharing conference here as a part of Chinese culture introduced to the West. And when I was a student at Harvard, I went to MIT, which is nearby. We have a Falun Gong clubs there, and students from different countries, professors, academics, and so it started on the university campus in the United States. Now it's into every sector of society now.
And talk to us about how does Falun Dafa spread so naturally? Why does it spread so naturally like that?
Well, I think the value, the principle of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, really, you know, is a universal value. So everybody embrace it. And in addition, the 5 gentle exercise really help improve people's well-being, not just physically, but mentally. So it's been very popular. And now we have over 100 million people around the world.
Incredible. Well, Arping Zhang, spokesperson for Falun Gong, thank you so much for your time today. Back to you guys at the headquarters.
Chris Beers, thank you for that. That was an incredible story again from this Erping that we just heard from, kind of recounting how the practice started in America, not just in China, right?
Exactly. And one thing I really wanted to highlight was that something he said was interesting, that it started on school campuses. I was reading some of the stories on Falun Information's website, actually. They were saying that back in the days, a lot of these university researchers, very scientific people, they started to organize their own collegiate clubs and practice sites. And so it made me wonder, what really drew this all sort of walks of life to come to this practice. And like Erping, Mr. Zhang had said here, I believe it is on those core values. And this parade here, you see that symbol. So Steph, I think you mentioned that, right? The symbols here in the middle, that's not a swastika symbol. It's actually one of the most important symbols of the Buddhist school. You'll see this in a lot of the ancient temples in China, in East Asia. And and you also see the Taiji symbols, but the coloring is different. So I believe, so this is according to the text of Falun Gong, that these are of different schools of Taoism. And so combined, this is supposed to represent a miniature version of the universe.
Right, so this symbol, I believe in China, it kind of embodies the concepts of eternity, infinity,
Yes.
the universe, very big concepts, nothing related to what happened in Germany during the Holocaust.
Yes.
Yeah, and on that note, the Falun Dafa Information Center explains that the emblem of Falun Dafa, like we're talking about, is called the Falun, which is a Chinese term that translates loosely as wheel of law. So that is that symbol that you are seeing, in case you're curious. And again, we have those Chinese characters in traditional Chinese characters that talks about the tenets of the practice: truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. That's the English translation of that. And then on these banners, it's saying Falun Dafa, again, the name of this practice.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight something interesting is the parade. It seems relatively very different. It's much more about peace and quietness. And so whenever I've been sort of looking into Falun Gong, one of the core sort of theme is that it's about peaceful resistance. It's about peace. And so whether that's them gathering in front of the CCP headquarters on April 25th to seek answers as to why they're not being allowed to practice, to facing the persecutions over the last 20 plus years, one of the key theme here is still about being peaceful. And that's really, if you look at history, some of the most important movements have been done peacefully. So I think that's really important to note here, is that peace is what's been driving them to persevere through the hardships.
And the practice itself, as I understand it, is really about spiritual cultivation. The resistance part, or the peaceful resistance part, is really nothing political. It's more about telling people what's happening to their own people within China, the abuses that have been coming perpetrated against them inside China. But the practice itself is really just this spiritual growth cultivation practice.
Yeah, that's a great point that you both raised, because again, in The Slaughter by Ethan Gutman, he talks about that gathering by the appeals office in Zhongnanhai, or basically the Chinese governmental compounds. So this was in 1999, and about April, when a previous incident in Tianjin had resulted in some of these practitioners getting arrested and even thrown in jail. They were known as the Tianjin 45. And so people were going to their local appeal offices being like, release them, they didn't do anything bad, we're cultivators, even some of you practice, you all know about this. And they're like, we can't do anything, go to Beijing. So what happened was 10,000 practitioners all went to Beijing. And they were just standing there outside of these appeal offices in the capital, basically, of China. And there's several reports that said, they were just very quiet, they were very clean, they just stood there. And even after they left, they had picked up the cigarette butts that the Chinese soldiers and police had been scattering around. So to your point about this being peaceful, there was never any force being raised against what they were seeing as, a terrible thing, that some of them had been beaten and thrown in jail.
Yeah, and just one point to highlight, Tiff, on that, what you said is the demonstration here today, it's not just about their own path to seek right to practice and so on. It's really about protecting the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and those fundamental values.
Oh, wow. Okay, we have the band coming up again. Let's just take a moment to listen to that gorgeous sound. Wonderful. So in time, so unified.
And again, in case people are curious, Tianguo means celestial or even heavenly. So it's, oh, there it is on screen. So this is basically a heavenly band would be the direct translation. And as many have said, right, it's very uplifting. And I think behind it, we might be able to see some, oh, there we go, some lotus flowers. These ladies are wearing dresses that look like they're lotuses on the bottom. Lotuses actually have a rich history in China, especially the symbolism of growing out of the mud and kind of that remaining and keeping that purity despite the surrounding circumstances. I think it even reflects in Buddhism. Is that true, David?
Yeah, so there's a very big emphasis on purity. And, in Buddhism, from my understanding, is that it's about reaching that level of tranquility and purity. Now, I'm very interested in, this whole idea of using the flower, because often, flower, each of them is supposed to mean something different, but no, I don't think anything ever uses lotus as sort of that symbol, except in Chinese culture. So even, throughout all of its history, you see lotus is always the big emphasis because of what it symbolizes, which is purity. And it's really fitting for this one here.
Now, for those of you who are just tuning in, this is NTD's live special coverage of the 2024 World Falun Dafa Day Parade right here in New York City. And we do have our reporters on the ground there speaking to people all about what's happening down there. So let's tune in and find out what's happening on the ground. Arlene Richards, tell us who have you got here?
Well, we've got Dr. Sean Lin. He's an assistant professor of biomedical sciences, and we're enjoying this parade with all the beautiful floats and all the smiles despite the rain. Dr. Lin, this practice has been called a higher science. How would you explain that?
So, the current empirical science have fundamental limitations in its principles and methodologies in understanding the universe and the living beings. So current devices and tools may not be able to detect different life forms and different understanding of different matters, materials. So people try to develop different sensors, for example, electromagnetic ones or photonic sensors or temperature pressure sensors, right? But actually human bodies actually is a very comprehensive sensor systems. So the Falun Dafa system actually through the meditation exercise can improve your energy level, improve your sensor system. So you can actually tap into the universe, tap into the energy of the universe much better and probably better harmonized with the universe. So I think it's a very different way in try to understand the universe using your body as a tool. And also, I think Falun Dafa touch the spiritual realm because the empirical science primarily focuses on your physical body, right? But the meditation system of Falun Dafa and the improvement of mind nature all touch about your spiritual aspect. So I think it deals the human body more comprehensively.
Now, you talk a little bit about spirituality and energy, and some people associate this practice with religion. So what do you say to people who say scientists don't believe in religion?
I think a lot of you have wrong stereotype thinking that science and religions are something conflicting each other. But actually, science, I think, is a profession. It's a way to try to explore the mystery and the truth of the universe. But if you have a lot of science knowledge, doesn't mean you totally master the universe, truths or miracles. You don't. So these two concepts is very different, and I think scientists also have all kinds of maybe internal pressures, from the work, from your studies. So scientists also need to improve their moral, improve their, mental health as well. So scientists is also a human being. So I think just like many other professions, the scientists and many people in many different disciplines all have spiritual pursuits. So many scientists actually believe in religions and choosing different religious beliefs so that they can understand the universe from a different angle. So I think that's very, very important as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lin.
All right, thank you so much, Arlene. Now, for those who may want to know more about Falun Dafa, you can actually find out all about it by visiting the official website of Falun Dafa at falundafa.org.
I did find that interview right there really fascinating because actually Falun Dafa has won awards in recognition from around the world for helping to improve people's mental and even physical health, kind of like that doctor was talking about. And Mr. Li Hongzhi himself, the founder of Falun Dafa, is a 5-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He was nominated by the European Parliament for the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought. He is also the recipient of Freedom House's International Religious Freedom Award. And here in the U.S., Mr. Li first accepted a proclamation from the city of Houston, Texas. They declared October 12, 1996, Li Hongzhi Day. The city also named Master Li, that's what the practitioners call him, an honorary citizen and goodwill ambassador. That really fits into what that doctor was just telling us.
And we see here again on the live footage here the symbol of Falun Dafa, which is called the Falun, or the wheel of law, as Tiffany you mentioned. It's the central symbol here as it represents sort of the core teachings of both the encompasses all of that of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance in the symbol. And again, that middle symbol there is not, it's the Buddhist school symbol of Srivatsa. That's what it's called in Buddhism, rather than the swastika as we know more recently as.
And these beautiful flags as well. I mean, you know, these
really eye-catching.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? They're just moving in perfect unison. I just think there's such grace to them.
It's even quite mesmerizing, the way the flags are moving.
And actually, these flags are an integral part of Chinese warfare back in the day, you know, to help rally and inspire the troops. So they have that kind of cultural significance as well.
Yeah, and even here, right, you could almost imagine and picture these legendary Chinese warriors charging into battle. It's really bringing, you know, that kind of past to life here.
You know, something we kept seeing, but I have to mention, it was the dragon team.
Yes.
The dancing dragon team. And the formation, you know, it's a key part of Chinese culture because the dragon symbolizes that it's part of the association to the emperor, to prestige, to royalty, but it also symbolizes power and this dragon dance, for those of you who don't know, is actually one of the two ways. So in the Chinese Yangtze River, south of the Yangtze, they developed the southern style of dragon dance. In the northern part of it, they developed the northern style. So the one that we saw, I believe, is the southern style, which is much bigger and longer.
That is really fascinating because, you know, dragons are quite important to Chinese culture. Chinese people themselves see themselves as being descended in some ways from this mythical creature. It seems like it has a lot of relevance and symbolicness in this culture.
Exactly, and so in this parade we saw, so now what we're seeing is actually the call for stopping the forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners, which is something that's been happening in China since the early 2000s. Now, as we understand, Tiff, in 2006, there was an independent report by two Canadian human rights lawyers, David Mattis and David Kilgore, that really explored and investigated into this issue, which we'll talk more about. But now you see the lions with another dragon. So the lions and the dragons, they're often used in important ceremonies in China. So whether that's with a wedding or a sort of state affairs, etc., throughout its history, lions are shown as this, it's much smaller than the dragon, but it's closer to that earthly sort of importance as well, because lion itself is also very ferocious and it charges and leads the way as well.
And actually, for both of those types of dances, they were traditionally done by martial artists.
Exactly, because it takes a lot of muscle power for you to move around in those costumes with a lot of teamwork.
They're very heavy, actually, especially the head of the dragon and the lion.
I mean, they're looking quite playful, and you often see these in terms of, you know, other cultural celebrations like the Lunar New Year. They have also dancing lions and dragons that you see there in the back, because in China, again, dragons symbolize prosperity, nobility, auspiciousness, solemnity, and sanctity. And of course, if you are just tuning in, this is NTD's live special coverage of the 2024 World Falun Dafa Day Parade here in New York City. We do have our reporters out in the field. We're turning now to our reporter on the ground, Fiona. Fiona G, what do you have for us?
Hi, Steph. Yes, as you can see behind us, there are many beautiful and colorful banners walking by us. However, you know, Falun Dafa is actually persecuted under the Chinese Communist Party in China, and I actually have a practitioner here today who personally experienced this persecution. Hi, could you tell us a little bit about your experiences in China?
Yeah, after practicing Falun Dafa, I my heart was purified and my mind was clearer. I became a top student, but I was expelled from university because of CCP's persecution.
And what did you experience under this persecution?
Too much. Illegally detained 6 times, sexually abused, deprived of sleep 9 days. And I was almost detained when I was pregnant in China in 2008. And at least 6 of my fellow practitioners were persecuted to death. And just last month, several Falun Gong practitioners in my hometown, Shijiazhuang city near Beijing, was arrested.
Well, that's awful. Well, now that you're here in America, how does it feel to see so many Falun Dafa practitioners gathered together?
I'm very happy that I'm in a society freedom of belief, and we can celebrate Falun Dafa Day together and publicly. What's gonna can't happen in China.
Yes, and Shane, I know that you've been working to try and help these individuals in China who are being persecuted. How has that been going?
Oh, so in my hometown, there are 2 practitioners, Tang Lirong and Zhao Ji. They were persecuted because of their faith. In order to save them, I tried to reach out to our representatives. In this free nation, I learned that I can write to our Senator, Kirsten Gillibrand, and to get her attention on the persecution.
Wow, sounds like you've been doing quite a bit to try to raise awareness. Now here today at this World Falun Dafa Day parade celebrating the anniversary of World Falun Dafa Day, what do you want to say to the audience?
Today is a Falun Dafa Day, so we gather here to celebrate it and the values of freedom we couldn't have in the CCP China. Therefore, I hope the persecution could end soon and everyone in the world could enjoy the freedom. Thank you.
And just a quick question, what has your own personal experience been like learning Falun Dafa?
After learning Falun Dafa, I became peaceful and helpful to my body, and my body's situation just become better and better.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Mi Xiaozheng, back to you. Just a quick question. What differences have you noticed now that you're here in America? How does it feel to be in America?
I feel I can freely practice Falun Dafa, and in this society, it's totally different from China. Because I just want to say thank you, Master, and Falun Dafa is great, and CCP stop persecution.
Yeah, and what do you have to say to the audience watching this right now, watching this parade right now? What do you want to tell them?
Come to learn Falun Dafa. It's very great. It's good for you. Very good benefit for you.
Well, yes, as you hear, it seems that Falun Dafa has brought a lot of benefits to a lot of people. Unfortunately, it is still being persecuted in China. However, it seems that practitioners of Falun Dafa still bring a message of peace, hope, and strength to the rest of the world and are doing their best to spread awareness about it. Back to you, Steph.
Wow, incredible. What a hopeful, uplifting story there. And so touching, because this is the story of so many people.
Yeah, and as we heard from the interview and as we see on screen, this is the second section of the parade with the theme of stopping the persecution of Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong. This part, Falun Dafa practitioners are holding up banners that you can see displaying both to show the severe persecution they've faced over the past 25 years since 1999.
Long time. So former CCP leader Jiang Zemin launched the persecution on July 20th, 1999, to try to wipe out Falun Dafa completely. You know, he saw Falun Dafa's belief in truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance as a threat to the Communist Party's control.
Exactly. Steph, you're seeing on the screen right now that these are actual direct messages to tell individual provincial or even local level officials to release some of the Falun Gong practitioners still being detained in China. And the banner on the left here on your screen reads to advocate and to voice for for international groups to stop the CCP and to stop the persecution. And again, I think this is a part where they're also asking for the stop of the forced organ harvesting still happening in China. And I just want to highlight one point here. In the interview, I thought was amazing that she mentioned how now she can enjoy those fundamental freedoms in America. So it tells you Falun Gong practitioners are the first hand, they've experienced what communism and the amount of evil that it has brought to the Chinese society, and now they're actually coming to warn Americans about protecting those same values that they now hold so true and dear to their heart.
And just a little bit more detail about this persecution inside China. It's estimated that hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of people, of Falun Dafa practitioners, have been detained in re-education through labor camps, prisons, and other detention facilities just for refusing to renounce their spiritual practice. And even perhaps 5,000 or perhaps more have been persecuted to death. So it's been a brutal 25-year campaign of suppression. The regime itself used everything at its disposal to target this group with police, courts, media, even using people's workplaces to try to force Falun Dafa practitioners to give up their beliefs. But as we just heard, as we can see here, people have really stood by what they believe in, which is, I think, something that everyone around the world can really appreciate.
It really begs the question, what makes someone, after 25 years of this persecution, still being able to come out and to celebrate this practice, and after going through all of those trauma with their families? Because what we heard from the interview just now, it's not a 1 in a million case that they're facing this type of experience. This is actually a representative of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of families in China who went through this type of experience, being detained, being persecuted, jailed for their beliefs. When they say that they're not going to stop believing in truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, what happens is an entire government machine runs full force to stop them. Now, let me just tell you one point that's really important, Steph, which is that the CCP does make Falun Gong its #1 target to attack, both inside China and overseas, as well as the former leader Jiang Zemin, who launched this persecution, stated that he will systematically destroy Falun Gong practitioners' body, spirits, and finances, just to show you how much of this regime really does not want Falun Gong's messages to be around.
Yeah, and on the note of the interviewees that we heard from talking about even warning America, right, that they don't want this to come here. Recently, we just saw that Russia has detained some Falun Gong practitioners. That says they're working, as in Russia, is working quite closely with the Chinese regime in terms of the war in Ukraine. We also just heard that some practitioners were detained in Serbia just for 24 hours because Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping was visiting that country. And so that again lays out how we often hear of the long arm or transnational repression of the Chinese Communist Party. This isn't just happening inside China. It's all these countries that are working with it. Those freedoms of belief could also come under threat by the Chinese regime, even around the world.
Exactly. Now we're seeing this banner, which is very interesting. The message reads, "Quit Chinese Communist Party." And to stop the persecution on the left, and to, this is the end of the CCP on the right, which is interesting because I believe we'll be covering about the Quit the CCP movement very soon. But just a brief idea of what that is. It's a movement that started after the introduction of a really good book called The 9 Commentaries of the Chinese Communist Party, which systematically outlined all of the issues and all of the evils of the CCP. After that, people in China started to voluntarily quit from the party. You don't have to exit the membership, you don't have to publicly announce it, but it's about that you no longer believe in the ideology, the lies and the propagandas of the CCP. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, actually on that note, if you go to toidang.com or Quit the CCP website itself, it talks about how it allows Chinese people to quit the CCP organizations they joined in the past. They can also get a Toidang certificate that is officially recognized outside of China, certifying that one has separated oneself from the Communist Party. So I thought that was really interesting in that they do offer that.
So some of the slogans you're now seeing on these banners, the end goal of communism is to destroy the world, as well as, I think this one's very interesting, it is to end the evil Chinese Communist Party, which is, it makes me wonder why this movement is gaining traction, because now 430 million Chinese people have quit from its 3 organizations, the Party, the Youth League, and the Young Pioneers. It is because Chinese people really are waking up to the evil of the CCP.
And you can see those numbers of how many people, 400,000 or more, I think, and counting, on the Tuidang website, and also some of the names of those people on the Epoch Times Chinese version of that website, as they've been collating those names. But we'll get back to this. For those of you who are just tuning in, this is NTD's live special coverage of the 2024 World Falun Dafa Day Parade right here in New York City. And we have our reporter Arlene Richards on the ground, speaking with people down there. Arlene, what have you got for us?
We've got Leo Tim. He's the China news editor at Vision Times. Leo, how is Falun Dafa connected to Chinese culture and this parade?
So in traditional Chinese culture, there's a deep vein of these spiritual traditions and this belief, this overarching belief that man and heaven are one. So what Falun Dafa does is it really it's a revival of this belief, this idea that through spiritual cultivation, man can really elevate himself to the level of the divine. This is why in the 1990s, before it was persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party, Falun Dafa was so popular. Over 100 million people were practicing it.
What is the impact of these values, truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance in society today?
So as you see in society today, there's so much division, so much like political strife, division, everything, with this huge influx of information that we've never had before in history. Like, it's so easy just to be just be carried along with this giant trend, you know. And so with people practicing truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, really improving themselves from their inner self, I think it can do a lot to really bring back the social harmony and the societal values that we used to have.
Speaking of societal values, I think that this practice has had a social impact around the world. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so as we know, in China, it's not just Falun Gong that's being persecuted right now. It's the Uyghurs, it's the Christians, ordinary people under the zero COVID, the draconian zero COVID campaign. So also, not only that, the Chinese Communist Party is stretching it's trying to expand its authoritarian and malign values all around the world. So by resisting the persecution in China, Falun Gong practitioners in China or all around the world, as we see here today, we're actually resisting. We're helping to bring an end to this tyrannical Communist Party.
Thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, thank you so much, Arlene. Wow, just seeing another. So much passion coming from this young man, of course, stemming from his own experiences and seeing those of his relatives and friends going through this. And I do want to say that earlier I had quoted 400,000, but it's actually 400 million people have quit the Chinese Communist Party. And this really isn't about politics, though, because it's also not about overthrowing a government. It's more of a spiritual revival, this Tuidang Quit the CCP movement, because really, as you mentioned earlier, people inside China and those following this practice are trying to get back to their traditional roots. And inside China, they see this communism as a foreign influence that isn't really who they are.
Exactly. China is before the Chinese Communist Party took over in 1949, had a long history of Chinese culture, but somehow systematically it was ended in 2 decades under the CCP after the 1970s. And so it just shows you that the CCP or communism is not a part of Chinese culture. It is actually a foreign entity to Chinese people. That's a very important message because China, before communism, is what's really China. And today, the CCP has capitalized, co-opted the gloriousness and also the history of China to justify its own doings as if it is a representative of the CCP. So this is very interesting. That picture you just saw there is a stone carving from China that is a natural, I believe it was part of a meteor that they has now become a tourist destination. On there, those letters are carved as the Chinese Communist Party will end. But in the CCP propaganda, they skipped the end part. They just said it was Chinese Communist Party, or you could say it will perish. So in Chinese, it says 中国共产党亡. And I just want to add one point on this is that he mentioned how these Falun Gong practitioners are demonstrating, again, what's happening around the world. A lot of these evil doings are because of the CCP, and Falun Gong practitioners has been the first and very vocal about the issues to try to get people to understand that the CCP is evil.
Right here we're seeing on screen how it says help end genocide in China. Recently in the news a lot is this term genocide, but what are they talking about here?
Well, particularly with Falun Gong, the persecution itself, there is the issue of forced organ harvesting, which in many cases the method of execution itself is the forced organ harvesting. And now practitioners are jailed and they're detained in many cases because they are an organ donation source for organ tourism in China. So in the early 2000s, the investigation revealed through independent calls into Chinese hospitals that Falun Gong practitioners in a large number were being kept, and then you have organ tourism into China where you can basically get an organ transplant within a week or two. That number is unthinkable to most countries. Somehow in China, you're able to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point because there are estimates from multiple separate independent reports that do indicate hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners may have been killed in order to extract their organs to help facilitate this organ transplant and even tourism industry that you are seeing in China. And there is a combined update of the work of famous doctors Kilgore Matus and also the investigative reporter Gutman called Bloody Harvest. An update, and this was published in 2016, and they are estimating that the Chinese Communist Party reports about 10,000 organ transplants per year. They found the actual transplant volume is 60,000 to 100,000 per year. This is since 2000, so that gives an idea of the scale that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, in some ways, what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. What's their motivation? Trace it back to the money. These organs are worth a lot of money. It's horrific to think of, but you know, the least expensive transplant, which could be, for example, a kidney, costs around $70,000. And some other organs can cost up to $500,000. And people flying from around the world coming to China just to have a transplant to try to save their lives, probably. But what is the true cost here?
Exactly. And Steph, just so you know, before 2015 in China, there was not a state organ donation system, meaning that the numbers for data or the number of transplants being done in the hospitals before 2015 did not match the number of official registered donors of organs in China. That alone is very suspicious. And I think this is a good point to mention that what's happening now with the Uyghurs, which we widely know about, that's happening in the concentration camps, a lot of the organ harvesting and the persecution methods were perfected on Falun Gong practitioners back in the 90s, and they've now systematically used it against every single other group, whether it's a faith group, prisoners of conscience, or dissidents in China. They've systematically created this entire system, and it all started with the persecution of Falun Gong back.
And we heard. Yeah, absolutely. And we heard from some of the people on the ground there who practicing, talking about how they improved their health through doing the practice. A lot of these people have experienced a lot of improvements. They were able to give up addictions, no longer smoking, leading healthy lifestyles. So this is one of the aspects of why, you know, they have such healthy organs. But on the other side is, you mentioned some of the studies, but there also have been investigators who made undercover calls to Chinese hospitals. You know, staff there at the hospitals openly admitted to having access to organs from Falun Dafa prisoners, to people who were, you know, allegedly inquiring about getting a transplant. So it's very much out there in the open, although the Chinese Communist Party denies having anything like this going on.
Yeah, so now you see on the screen, this is the Chinese waist drum. Now, waist drum started in southern China, and it's supposed to be, it actually started in Shanxi province, not southern China, northern China, and it's really spread throughout the rest of the northern regions of China because it's a beautiful sight to see. And you hear this like unison of drumming, which I find it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it seems quite invigorating, and just the colors of their outfits themselves are very bright and uplifting. But here again, we are talking about the atrocities committed by the Chinese Communist Party, not just to the Falun Gong, but it really seems all of the Chinese society under this.
Well, interesting, Tiffany. The persecution of Falun Gong created something called the 610 office. The 610 office was an extra legal system that essentially suspended the rule of law inside China since the persecution started, because they could move entirety of the Chinese state resources to persecute Falun Gong. And at the same time, with the persecution, it also started the entire censorship apparatus that we see in China today, including the firewall of censorship, including the massive surveillance state that we know in China. All of these artificial big data, surveillance, all of these originated in the need to control the Falun Gong practitioners inside China.
But you mentioned the word extra legal. So often, here in the West, we're like, oh, if you do something criminal, then you should be punished. But it sounds like even the Chinese Communist Party knew what they were doing was wrong to the Falun Gong, so that they created this 610 or extra legal body. Am I understanding that right?
That's absolutely correct, because before the persecution, everybody, even the top members of the CCP, did not believe in that they should start this persecution. So it was solely the work of former leader Jiang Zemin. And because of that, there was no way for them to give these criminal charges to Falun Gong practitioners, who, by the way, are preaching this peaceful resistance right now. So with all that being said, they had to find ways in which they could circumvent the legal system, circumvent the courts, and circumvent the judges to bring about ways to put them into jail.
Right, and to your point, you mentioned former Chinese Communist Party leader Jiang Zemin. He was the one that launched the persecution against Falun Gong or Falun Dafa on July 20th of 1999. That is still ongoing to this day. So that's been basically 25 years of this persecution. And Jiang Zemin, he saw Falun Gong's beliefs in truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance as a threat to the Communist Party's control, even though a lot of his fellow Politburo members, were also practicing and told him not to do this. He launched this massive campaign. And of course, if you are just tuning in, this is NTD's special live coverage of the World Falun Dafa Day Parade here in New York City. We do have our reporters out on the ground. We're going to go to one of them now. Let's see. What do you have for us? There's Arlene. What do you have for us?
Well, we have Arsha Radaway. He's a university student from Canada. Arsha, what does the Falun Dafa's plans for ending the persecution in China mean for freedom of belief?
I think what Falun Dafa practitioners are doing is really significant, because they are, in the front line to fight for freedom of religion. And it's really a fight between goodness and evilness. And with the CCP being the symbol of evilness, I think it has done a very, very evil persecution of Falun Gong. It's very unprecedented in the human history what has happened to Falun Gong, and this persecution and forced organ harvesting is still happening in China. I think it's the worst human right abuse that has been happened in the history so far. So I think what Falun Gong practitioners are doing is very significant.
So how does the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of Falun Gong practitioners affect people around the world?
So I think what CCP is doing is not only harming its own people, but also trying to, infiltrate other countries, other free nations. So it's very important that we speak out and we try to make awareness. That's why we are here to tell other people, the people that maybe do not know about what's happening in China, so we can have a bigger impact and make awareness about what's happening in China.
Now, what motivates you to continue this fight to stop the persecution? You are a practitioner from India, and yet you're really working hard to stop this persecution in China. What motivates you?
I think what motivates me, if I want to give a personal answer, is that Falun Gong has changed my life significantly, the way I look at the world, and it made me to be a better person. So first of all, I want to offer this to others and help them to be better humans. And that motivates me to be here today and travel here just for this parade all the way from Canada. So it's really inspiring that see people that the main goal is not to change others, is to look inside and try to be a better person and not blame others. And I think that's the biggest motivation I have. And when I see people are being persecuted, it's just so heartbreaking, because these people are just trying to apply truth, compassion, and forbearance, the main principles of Falun Gong, in their daily life. So there is nothing bad about this. and it's very inspiring and very, it make me motivated to be here and tell people that what CCP is doing is really evil, and what I think NTD and Epoch Times is doing, no other media is doing that, to tell the truth about Falun Gong.
All right, thank you so much, Arsha, and back to you in the studio.
Arlene, thank you. That was quite an amazing story that we just heard. I want to bring up, he touched on the word unprecedented about what the Chinese Communist regime is doing to Falun Gong practitioners, but also on the note of how this impacts, even Americans, right? We've been talking about the forced organ harvesting that's in China, and just expanding on that, there have been reports of people who call into China for something like, say, a heart transplant, and the doctor on the other end is like, oh yeah, when do you want to come to schedule this? That is unheard of, because what that means is someone is being killed for that organ, right? You can't survive without your heart. And normally it's really, really hard to get an organ like a heart, because you have to have all of these right conditions met. And so we do have certain bills in certain states, like in Utah recently, to combat this forced organ harvesting and tourism that's happening in China. So it's making sure that Americans cannot go to China for a transplant, so that they are not unwittingly participating in these crimes against humanity, is what a tribunal was labeling this, just to expand on what the interview we said right there. I think right now on screen we're seeing again the rocks that you were talking about earlier, David.
Exactly. I want to focus on this banner here. It's what it reads just now passing the screen is, loving the country does not equal to loving the party. Now, this is a very important misconception for people. The CCP's propaganda says in order to love China, you must love the Chinese Communist Party. But as we know in the United States, you can support either political parties, but your love and patriotism for the country is separate from that. But in China, they make this reliance that you need the CCP. Without the CCP, there's no new China, as they say, which is false, because parties should still be still show allegiance to the country. And today, unfortunately, the Chinese Communist Party has made it that other way around, which I think is very important.
And people within China, people in America or elsewhere may not know, but within China, people are actually required to or compelled to pledge their lives to the party. This is not just an average kind of political party.
Totally, Steph. When I was younger, the first thing you do joining first day of elementary school is they take you into a classroom, swear allegiance to the communist flag, raise your right fist, and then they put you on a red scarf for the rest of the school. And so throughout your life, you're brainwashed into believing that the party is like your own family, and in turn you must do everything to protect, defend the party, and which it goes from the elementary to junior high, high school, all the way to college until your adulthood, which then, if you're lucky enough, they will invite you into the party membership.
And what you're saying about treating the party like your family, this goes even further back to the Cultural Revolution, and where actually the party turned people against their own family.
Exactly, that's a great point. Now, people versus people was the core of the Cultural Revolution, which is also why that goes back to why people started to practice after, was because they suffer so much mentally, emotionally from having to fight their neighbors and their own families during the Cultural Revolution.
And actually on why it impacts Americans, right? Under the Chinese Communist Party, they see all Chinese people as basically property. So even if you're abroad, even if you're living in America, they feel, as in the Chinese Communist Party, feels that it can call on you to do something, which is why maybe you've seen those headlines in the news talking about a Chinese national who's digging up a corn seed in the fields of Iowa to steal and bring back to China. But then what happens if they get caught? The Chinese Communist Party sees them as disposable, as we've been hearing today. So that is another reason of why this parade and the awareness it's bringing also is important to Americans.
I just want to highlight one point, which is that currently you're seeing around the world, there's a clearing contrast between the fight, or the good versus evil fight that's taking place. And you can really see that a lot of the issues that we're facing today, whether that's with global conflicts, with human rights issues, cultural aspects, you can see the footprints of the Chinese Communist Party. So what many in the interview and on the street now are telling you is not that this is the Chinese issue or one that's just happening in China. This is a global issue. The Chinese Communist Party has used its tentacles or claws to reach into every aspect of American society around the world. And what we're doing here with the protest, or the parade, sorry, is to show that aspect that the danger is at our doorstep and is not just with China, but everybody around the world against the CCP.
I think that's a really good point, because as we're seeing here, it's talking about the 9 commentaries and telling the Chinese people, but also the world, to wake up to the threat of the Chinese Communist regime, especially, since the pandemic and how that impacted the entire world. And in case you are just tuning in, this is NTD's live special coverage of the 2024 World Falun Dafa Day parade here in New York City. We're coming to you live from our studio in New York as well. And we do have our reporters out in the field, in the ground in Manhattan. One of them is Fiona G. Fiona, what do you have for us?
Hi, I'm here with another practitioner of Falun Dafa. His name is Elliot. He's also got some interesting stories to share on how he came to learn about Falun Dafa. Hi, Elliot. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to learn about Falun Dafa?
Absolutely. So during COVID, right after COVID, I spent a lot of time kind of isolated and alone, and I was reading a lot about spiritual practices, and I really knew deep down inside my heart that I really wanted to find a spiritual practice that could really help me to improve myself. I was going through a tough time in my life, and I spent a lot of time reading all these different books. And what I ended up finding was a YouTube video on some ancient spiritual practice in Greek society. And in the comment section, there was a link, and that link linked to a book. It's called Zhuan Falun. And I opened that book, and it was a very emotional moment for me, because I remember opening that book and reading it, just the opening words, Dafa is the wisdom of the Creator. And just reading that, and just felt like I had found something deep in my heart that I was looking for a long time. And since that day, I've been practicing Falun Dafa, and I feel like my mind and my body have been purified. My whole life, my whole worldview has changed. I feel like a different person.
Wow, yes, you say that you feel like your life has changed. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, before I found the practice, I was anxious. I was kind of isolated. I really felt like I didn't really collaborate with people well. And now, since then, I feel like I'm more confident. I'm more open. I feel like my relationships are a lot better, and I feel like a whole different person.
Yeah, and in terms of relationships with family, with colleagues, with friends, how has that changed?
Yeah, I remember I worked at Amazon for a few years. I remember there was a moment in time where I actually had someone was yelling at me during a meeting. I remember before the practice, I would have got upset. I would have felt like, man, why is this happening to me? Why is this person yelling at me? But after finding the practice, I stayed calm and I stayed composed. I tried to be as compassionate and kind as I could be. And after the meeting, people came up to me and said, wow, you handled that so great. You handled yourself so confidently. And I really felt like before that, I would never be able to do that.
Wow, that's amazing. And what have people who know you, what have they said about your changes after you started practicing Falun Dafa?
Oh, they said a lot of things. They said that I really put my heart into my work. That I really try to be a better person everywhere I am. They really seen a lot of changes in me.
That's amazing. And has practicing Falun Dafa changed your outlook on life in any way?
Absolutely. I feel like before finding the practice, I was in a kind of a dark, isolated place, and this practice has given me hope. It's helped me see a brighter, beautiful future, not just for myself, but for all the world.
Right, yeah, I think this is a common phenomenon among young people today. They feel very hopeless and that they don't really have a future. What do you think about that?
I think a lot of people right now, especially, middle-aged men my age, a lot of them feel isolated and alone like I did. In college, it's really hard for me. I felt like I was kind of isolated and needing kind of a big environment. And this practice has given me a family. It's given me people that I can be around. It's given me a lot of great things.
Well, that's great, Elliot. Thank you so much. Well, Tiff, it looks like the parade has passed us here already, but the parade will continue going past Times Square and to the Chinese embassy. Back to you.
Fiona, thank you. What an incredible and uplifting story that was.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many of those, as we've heard earlier. So many people had their lives transformed. And even just through their character, I think a lot of people out there are searching for something more, feel that something's wrong. All through COVID, of course, the world went through this kind of traumatic experience. But to have something to rely on and to really uplift you is such a gift.
So on the screen here, you see, again, it's the call for quit the CCP. Now, just for background information, Leonid Kravchuk, who was the first post-Soviet president of Ukraine and the last Soviet Communist Party leader, he actually praised the movement as well as the 9 commentary as that, saying that this book will change the thinkings of millions. Now, this is a former communist leader saying that. It shows you. So for the Quit the Communist Party movement, it really started with the book of the 9 commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party. And after reading that book, it really was almost like a life-changing experience for me and my understanding of the CCP, even though I was born in China and had lived some of that experience.
Right, and so we keep bringing up the 9 commentaries. So this is published by the Epoch Times. This was in 2004, and it exposed the Chinese Communist Party's long history of human rights abuses against the Chinese people. And after that, we're now talking about Toidang, right? So after that, the Epoch Times website started getting all of these letters from readers saying that they wanted to renounce their membership in the CCP and its organizations. So in the beginning, the Epoch Times started compiling these statements, and now there are over 400 million names posted on their website of people who have renounced the CCP.
And you can also see some pretty engaging video versions of the 9 commentaries on YouTube and other websites.
I just want to highlight, maybe audience watching this might be thinking, you know, what can this movement do? Are you actually quitting from the membership? Well, what's important here is to understand that this movement in its core is to reject the ideas and the propaganda of the CCP. Even if you live in China today, we've seen that at the end of 2022, there was a white paper protest in China. It demonstrated that people stopped believing the lies of the CCP. And in fact, I'll give you an example. There was a senior Chinese diplomat named Chen Yonglin. He defected to Australia after having spoken against for the Chinese Communist Party. And it shows you that people can change, and that if a Chinese diplomat can do that, ordinary Chinese people across all lives, after hearing about what the CCP has done, and that's really what awakened them. And so when you start to have that, and if everybody in China stopped believing in the CCP, I think that's the beginning of the end of the Chinese Communist Party.
And yeah, in case people are curious, if you go to Toidang, or the Chinese version of Quit the CCP, that's what that word means, you can get a Toidang certificate that is officially recognized outside China to say that you have renounced the CCP.
So this movement is for Chinese people who have signed up or, joined the Communist Party or its affiliated organizations. But what does it mean to Americans or others?
So before I mention that, I just want to translate some of the banners here. A lot of this actually sent messages saying that we need to reject the CCP, restore the original China before communism. Now, Steph, to answer your question, this movement is not just for the Chinese people. In my view, it is one that everybody can get behind, because as I mentioned, a lot of the issues that's happening around the world, especially issues Americans face every single day, is because of the Chinese Communist Party. There's overcapacity issues. They're not really doing anything on climate change, on fentanyl. Now, so rejecting the CCP for Americans is of same. Obviously, you're not in China, you don't have a Chinese Communist Party membership, but it doesn't mean that you don't. You can also follow the same idea of rejecting the CCP's lies and deception.
And here we have the waist drums again. Look at those lovely outfits and the lovely colors and just the amount of energy that they have. I think we can listen in a little bit. And for those curious, the music and the song that's playing in the background is in Mandarin. It's saying Falun Dafa how, or Falun Dafa is good.
Exactly. The waist drum team, usually, actually, again, Steph, you mentioned in ancient time it's performed by men because it's martial, and there's also the artistic side as well. So now we see with the women's version, it's more of the artistic expression of that.
And also a note to the diversity of people who practice Falun Dafa as displayed here. As you said, they're somebody's auntie or uncle. You can see elderly people, even the very young, right there in the parade.
Right, because right now inclusivity and diversity are buzzwords, and it looks like this parade is also including and celebrating that.
Well, just one point to mention, Falun Gong, like I said, was a grassroots movement because it really transcended, nationality, societal levels, prestige, all of these things. And it's like, if you want to practice, you can just come and practice.
Right, and again, if you are curious, you can read and find a lot more information on falundafa.org, I think, and then all the books that have been shown and mentioned can be read there for free as well. So in case you are curious and want to know more information, there's also the Falun Dafa Information Center if you also want some shorter summaries of, any questions you might have about all the different things we've covered. So those are also great resources.
That's true. And if you're curious about this movement to quit the CCP, that website is tuidang, tuidang.org. And we do see some more footage here of the parade as it continues.
So some of the banners, again, I just want to highlight the movement of 9 commentaries as well as quit the CCP. Now, the reason why it gained popularity, another point of that is it shows the influential side of things, which doesn't often happen on the surface. It could happen within, in the backstage, but it doesn't mean that things aren't changing. So, we often think that maybe there's a need for a violent revolution of some sort, a dramatic change. But actually, no. Like I mentioned, some of the most important movements of history happened because there was a peaceful resistance. And it ultimately shows the contrast between the violent communist regime and the peaceful people. And I think that point alone is very important. And so today we're seeing that clearly. Now, if everybody can abandon the CCP from the bottom of their heart, I think that's, how can the CCP exist? A lot of this is they put the fear and the pressure to coerce people. And if you can resist that pressure from within, then that's when they stop their influence.
All right. And we're just going to tune in now to some words from people who've been out there at the parade and what they're thinking about it. Let's check it out.
Although I'm not Chinese, we were expats in Shanghai, China around 2009 for about 3 years. And this is a great parade. We love seeing it here in New York City. We're glad that the city is supporting the Chinese people and Falun Dafa. I think I'm saying that right. And it's just great to see everyone here. It's a beautiful practice, and we're happy that they're celebrating and getting the word out.
A lot of people, yes, I'm very surprised to see that here in New York Street. I think if we have something to, to defend, about the tradition, about our culture, is good to continue, yeah.
And I was hanging out with my friends, and this parade caught us by surprise because we weren't expecting it. But we had the chance to enjoy it because it gave us a different feeling about New York, and the spirit of this parade, it transmitted to us something very nice. It's a good thing that they have a chance to demonstrate their feelings in here. New York is a multicultural city and made it happen. So I'm happy for these people, and I'm happy that I had the chance to see it.
We both come from communist countries, just like Albania. Way back then, about a few decades ago, we used to be very, very close friends. So we do know what China is going through. We went through that. But thank God we're in this great place, United States, that we have the chance to present and keep our traditions alive without being prosecuted like we had back home. And I'm glad you guys are doing this. I'm glad to see that. I have great respect for the Chinese people, the country itself. You guys have a great tradition. Food as well. Me and my wife would love Chinese food and my kids. Keep going, guys. Things are going to change, and I wish for that.
To the spirit of a lot of people around the world, and I think a lot of people, especially since the pandemic, have been seeing the Chinese Communist Party in a new light. And also, as I've been watching and being part of the news throughout that period, there's a lot more talk about the distinction between Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese Communist regime, which you heard one of the watchers of the parade here just mentioning as well. So I think that's a really worthwhile point to bring up.
Yeah, I think it's also good that people start to ask questions, particularly after COVID started, which is where did this virus come from? And you know, what is the relationship to China, to Wuhan, and all of these things? I think a lot of people after the COVID-19 situation really started to think otherwise. You know, why is it that there is a regime in the world that is capable of doing this, and what is our relationship to that particular regime? And so I think it's a good chance for people to ask those questions, and I hope we can provide some of the answers. But for people out there, it's a really good opportunity to learn about why are there people, you know, dressed in yellow, in bright blue, talking about the danger of the Chinese Communist Party to not just people in China, but to Americans, to all those around the world.
Right, and on that note, we have these colorful flags again with these traditional Chinese characters. David, could you just translate that quickly for us?
Yeah, so most of them read quit party, and some of them read 9 commentaries. Again, it's calling to that movement of quitting the party. As well as I see it behind that, this is very important. It says that the CCP is the most evil virus most evil virus scourges the world. I believe this is another call to that, the fact that, you know, there's a twofold, the Chinese CCP virus, but as well as just the general harm that it has provided to the world. And you can really see this everywhere communism has gone. You know, there's a lot of talks today in America saying that we need more education on the evils of communism. I know Florida has been a very big focus on that. But it's really true. I think a lot of people know about the horror and the terror of Nazi Germany, but many people know about what communism has done to the world.
Well, that's right. And as you mentioned, we've been speaking a lot about the 9 commentaries, and that was a series of editorials published by the Epoch Times. But more recently, the Epoch Times published another series of editorials called How the Specter of Communism is Ruling Our World. And that really speaks to this issue that you've mentioned, that, you know, we can all see various ways that these ideas have infiltrated daily life and political life and all kinds of aspects of life around the world. But you can see here beautiful families coming along, having their place in the parade, making it out here even though it's a little rainy today and overcast, but still making the time to come out and share their practice with the world.
It also does really make the colors pop despite the cloudy conditions we're seeing today in Manhattan.
I think one point about 9 commentaries is that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the movement. Again, it started back in 2004. It just shows you that a lot of things take time to accumulate, but just as our understanding of with the CCP, it also takes time. But now I am very grateful and very happy that many Americans are waking up to that as well.
And of course, as conflicts intensify both domestically and on the world stage, many people are searching for signs of hope.
But for me, this parade is one of those reminders of the impact that courage and perseverance can have in the face of seemingly impossible odds. We've just heard so many stories of people pulling through so much. The lady earlier who said that she was almost detained while she was pregnant, and there certainly have been people who've been detained while they were pregnant. And the kinds of troubles that they face in detention are really horrific too. But they've pulled through, you know, and those odds are really impressive. It's the story of overcoming and what helps people overcome. These people say it's, you know, their faith, they're the guidance of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance to get through really tough times. And even though being targeted for elimination, who would have thought, even in this day and age, there are people being targeted for elimination. Genocide is a true term for it. And this is, of course, by an authoritarian regime, and it's been going for nearly a quarter of a century, and yet they've prevailed even to this day.
And as more revelations come out about the Chinese Communist Party's many methods of transnational influence, infiltration, and suppression, which you can continue to learn more about here in our reporting on NTD, this day has really been a real reminder to cherish the freedoms that we do have.
Yeah, that's right. And this speaks to what you were saying about why it matters to Americans. We're all, and to people around the world, of course. We're based here in New York City, but to people around the world, we're all so intertwined and interconnected. So to keep those freedoms for the ages, you know, forging ahead, holding tight in our own way to those universal values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, that's such an inspiring message, I think. But David, how do you feel after watching today's parade? Any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, with everything, you know, it's always good to see that there's a fight here for those fundamental values.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, David. It's been great to have you all here with us today. This has been NTD's special live coverage of the 2024 World Falun Dafa Day Parade right here in New York City. Thank you for joining us. I'm Stephanie Cox.
And I'm Tiffany Meyer. Stay here for more beautiful parade footage, which will continue live streaming, and we will see you shortly for more original breaking news coverage.